Heyo everybody, I've been talking a lot to friends to try and figure out what exactly I want to do for my videos. So I know I have a couple where I'm playing with, I have like one I think with where I'm playing with a friend and playing Phasmophobia, but I realize that there will be days where I won't have people that are hanging out with me, so I wanted to be able to entertain regardless while I'm playing. Um, One of the things that I seem to entertain them most with is stories about my characters and stuff. If I'm not outright playing one of my characters, which I have probably mentioned at least once, which is Mimosa. Um, he's become my kind of little mascot, whether he likes it or not. Um, but I figured I would start with the story that he comes from, which is the Crimson Rose. The story itself went for several years before it finally came to an end. Um, the friend I was playing with just decided, I guess, that they were done. But the story itself started out as just a basic idea that I had. It was something I wanted to play out. Um, the characters initially were just two characters. The king, who didn't have a name because I wanted to give the other person that I was hoping would play the king the ability to name them and give them a bigger backstory, and Hayato, who was my character. Um, the king ended up being a bigger focus than intended. Um, he was supposed to be a creature that came from uh, Earth, but more like an ancient time period where they still had like the old villages, and it was a fantasy setting, so there were elves and dwarves and all kinds of things involved in the story. But initially, the king came from this other realm which existed below the one he was in, and when he gained all this power, he was able to go to the next realm up, and when he got there, he decided he wanted to remake the world that he had come into and basically have control over everything so that nobody could ever hurt or betray him again, which became a common theme throughout the whole story. Was a lot of betrayal, um, love affairs, and different scenarios that basically led to most of the characters having some form or another of problems with trust and believing that when somebody told them they would do something that they would actually do it. But this all started with really the king in the end, despite the fact that Hayato was my character, and initially I thought he would be the main character and like be the main focus, but really he ended up being on equal partnership with the king. Um, the king himself gained a lot of backstory, and when I say a lot, I mean a lot of backstory. It started out where he didn't have a name. He just was this horrible ruler that did whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, to whoever he wanted. And then over time, my friend gave him a name, Tuhkiot, or Kiot, when they eventually started just calling him by a nickname. But Kiot went from being this huge villain where he was so self-absorbed that he didn't even recognize that what he was doing might be wrong to other people, that it might hurt them, and I don't know if he even really cared at the time. Um, but he fell for my character Hayato, who wasn't really a um, leader of any kind. He wasn't intending to raise a rebellion or anything, but due to his inability to admit to his own emotions and feelings towards the king and towards the way things were going. He ended up accidentally starting a rebellion among the people in the kingdom, especially after the king decided to make him into the queen, and he ended up having children with the king. The children were Rose, who was the oldest, but was born the sickest of the three. He almost died. In fact, they thought he had died for a little while. And then you had the middle child, who was Mimosa, who I'll get into a little bit more, but probably with my next video. But he was the strongest-willed. He may not have been completely healthy when born, but he wasn't as sick as his brother Rose. And then you had the youngest child, who was Titmuth. And Titmuth wasn't sick, but he simply just did not have the power that the other children had. So, as they grew up, Titmuth took his mother's side on everything until he realized his mother didn't really even know what his side was, so he couldn't really be loyal to it. He wanted to know what he stood for. He was extremely mindset on justice and doing the right thing, even if it meant letting go of wrongs that had been done to oneself. He was also the quietest of the three, was more of a bookworm type, and wasn't really meant to be a major player in the story. He was just there because we just wanted to have more to work with, and he was kind of supposed to be a back story character mainly, and he ended up taking on a much more important role over time that would help to the evolution of Mimosa's character and even Rose a little bit. But I was when the whole story came to an end, out of all of the characters that had originally been at the beginning of the story, Hayato had basically come to terms with himself. He was not exactly happy with how things turned out, but he was no longer fighting the world as a whole, and he seemed to have some closure to his character. Tuhkiot, I'm not sure if he had any closure. From what I could tell of the character, he was nearly done as far as development was concerned. Xolotl was starting to grow, and he was split personality of Tuhkiot's. So I guess in a way that meant Tuhkiot himself wasn't done. Titmuth, the biggest reason why I even brought him up really with this part of my videos is because he was not only done, but they had a war before the story had shifted, and during that war he had lost hope, I guess, and he had ended up attacking Mimosa for things that he considered to be unjust that Mimosa had done. and ended up dying during that war, um, which left a scar on Mimosa because he had the most problems with trust when it came to all the characters. In fact, that's pretty much why I decided to start with this particular story and talking about my role plays, because with its loss, Mimosa, to me, my characters are more alive. When I create them, they have a personality set that I've given them. They have a little bit of a background story, which Mimosa's was literally built in the story, so I didn't have to make a background. Um, and they have an appearance. But when I delve into the psychology while I'm making a character, I put a lot into them. They stop being just a puppet on strings and start having their own thoughts and feelings towards the way things are going, which I've noticed a lot of writers have that with their characters, especially if their character is like a really good one. I would mention a writer that everybody knows. I'm going to mention the writer himself, but just not talk on his characters because they are copyrighted. But R.A. Salvatore has a lot of the similar ways that he writes. His characters may or may not go the direction that he's hoping for them to go in. The main character of a story may not end up being the main character of the story, and so on. And it's kind of the same way with my role plays. I don't always start out playing the main character, even though I think I am. And I think in Crimson Rose, I started out thinking Hayato was going to be my main character. He was going to be the one I wanted to focus on. And it ended up being Mimosa that I actually felt that deeper connection to. I don't know why. He's like the opposite of me in personality. He's very strong. He's very charismatic, at least outwardly. Um, but he has a lot of inner battles that he tends to end up having to fight. Um, he lacks self-confidence, even though he doesn't seem like he does. He portrays himself as being this insurmountable person. No one can break him. No one can take him down. He is the ultimate in every way, but at the same time, he's always questioning. He's questioning himself. He's questioning others. He doesn't know as solidly as he acts like he does that he's doing the right thing. The only thing he has to go on is what he feels is right and what he feels he can justify as an action. Now, I'm not gonna lie, none of these characters are what anybody would ever amount to being a hero. They're all villains. They all have a much darker element to them. And I think the whole idea of the stories that we were making with the Crimson Rose was to show that villains have the capacity to both act and be seen as heroes, even when you know that they aren't. Mimosa was especially a big example of this. He was absolutely adored. He still is. I do have him in other stories, but he is the charismatic bad guy that you want to hate but can't help but love. And I'm going to really miss watching the development on both sides of the fence for him, because without that story continuing, all I'm going to ever see anymore is my version of him and what he does, and he's not going to be able to interact with the people that built his life, basically. He will never talk to Kiot again. He will never be able to interact with Xolotl and even attempt to mend the issues that were between him and the monster that basically came in and took over the universe. He's not going to be able to amend the issues he had with his mother or his brothers. He's basically left with this feeling that every time he looks in the mirror, he's seeing someone he doesn't know will ever do the right thing, because the version of him that my friend played, he was falling for. He actually got, we decided at one point, because we had both played him, that we wanted to bring both versions together and see how they interacted. And instead of getting what we thought we would, where the characters would like utterly hate each other because of the way they are set up, instead they ended up literally just falling head over heels for each other. Um, they were always looking for the other one's um, approval, I guess, to make sure that they were doing the right thing, and they would do their best to get that approval, and it didn't matter what it took. They would just try endlessly. And the last thing that my version said to theirs was that they would watch over their home and make sure nothing happened while they were gone. And the next thing that my Mimosa knows mentally is that that entire world is gone, so he failed in his mind to keep that world safe. And because of that, he lost his other self. And on the flip side, his other self had promised he would come back, that they would pick back up where they left off, and they would solve all their problems, and just basically have what they never had: someone they could trust with all of their being, because how can you not trust yourself? And because of that mentality, the loss was a heavy hit to the character, because he had lied and he had betrayed himself, which were two things he never forgives out of anyone. So having him have to face the fact that he himself is the traitor, he himself is the liar, he himself gave up when he said he never would. And I know that in some ways, that is relatable to a lot of people on a lot of different levels, whether it's that they feel that way towards someone else, or if they feel that way, that they have done something in that regard, where they are literally in Mimosa's shoes and feel like they are the ones that failed in some way, even when they're not really the cause. They're not the reason why bad things happen. They just happen to get caught up in the bad things. And sometimes you can't stop what's happening, and you can't fix what the end result is. And no one should ever be left feeling like they can't, like they're at fault if something goes wrong, or they're at fault because they were unable to control a situation. um because you can't every time. And this character kind of exemplifies that fact, um, by not being able to accept the fact that he was not the reason why everything happened the way it did. That there was nothing he could do, and now that it's over, he can't fix it. And this is regardless of the fact that he's this super powerful being now. He still can't bring back that reality, because it's not something he is in control of. It is I guess in essence, fate. He's not. He it's just there's nothing he can do about it. Um, Despite having those feelings for my characters and feeling the depth of emotion that they have towards what happened, um, oh, I lost my track of thought. I still feel like there's more to be done, I guess. There's a lot more questions than there are answers, and I am hopefully going to be able to pick back up somewhere with them, give them a way to continue on. But it's just going to be really hard because I don't have that friend anymore, and so things that I took for granted, like being able to sit there and discuss what the character is going through, being able to just bring them up and go over everything that is going on in their head, and just someone that really understands and gets who the character is. I don't have that anymore. I had that every day for 7 years. Um, Close to it anyway, and I miss the friend. I do. But I understand where they were coming from. So I have no ill feelings at all. I guess it's just the confusion as to what I'm supposed to do now, you know. And I guess in a way that it's kind of mirrored in Mimosa's outlook on things. So I kind of felt like I would love to share these characters because they were such a big part of my life for so long, and they still are, and I don't think they're ever not going to not be a big part of my life. And I felt they deserved some attention, and a lot of my friends do enjoy listening and hearing about the stories, so I figured it might be, entertaining to sit here and play a game when I'm all by myself and just talk about them. I know it means that I'm going to be a bit erratic on explaining certain aspects of them because I won't think to mention something until I'm already partway into it, and then I'll have to backtrack. But I'm trying to keep my thoughts a little more linear so that I'm not confusing the heck out of any viewers that pop in. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed the character description and learning a little bit more about in-depth role-playing storytelling, because that's really what role-playing is. It's a story that two people get together and they tell together, and each person creates a set of characters that they're going to play, and they give them a part. And some people prefer to play characters that are more puppeted. Um, and what I mean by that is that they can change what the character's like on a whim. The character is not set in stone. They have a lot they can a lot of things that are going to change, or if they don't like what a character would do based on their personality, they'll just make them do something else that seems totally out of character for them. I can't play that way. I have to have a full set personality, and if what they're doing doesn't match that personality, then they won't do it. They'll do what it is befitting to them. So Mimosa may go off and hurt somebody, or may have a vendetta with somebody that I feel is not justified, but he does. And he because of his story, as a character, he would never walk away from said vendetta because it's just not in his nature. And I may think he needs to forgive someone, but as a character, he shouldn't, because it doesn't make any sense for him to do that. And so he won't forgive them, because that goes against everything that makes him him. um, like I said, he hates betrayal, he hates liars. So if he is friends with someone or even lovers with someone, and they either betray him or they lie to his face and he finds out, there's no forgiveness. He will not. He'll walk away and he won't come back. And if they try, he will attack them, because he has no. His emotional standpoint is the way his character was built. Emotionally, he can't let go. He doesn't have the ability to. Um, he's there's a lot of negative, um, negatively portrayed problems that he has as a character that were developed over time, and I'll get more into that with the next video, because I really need to cut this one short. I don't have a whole lot of time before I'm not going to be able to continue recording, because there'll be too much going on in my house. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit like and subscribe. Leave a comment if you want. And I hope you join us for the next video, whether it be me with friends or me doing another recording like this one, where I'm just discussing my characters as I go. Have a great one. Laters.